Chapter 20, Dirty Rats. It was an awful day when the judge sentenced Mellow C to life in prison without parole. I was just a 16-year-old boy going through seriously radical times. When his greedy lawyer broke the news, I wanted to kill the bastard, but Mellow C swayed me not to. He felt that his attorney had been fair. The all-white jury found my man Mellow guilty on all charges. He was convicted of excessive drug trafficking, resisting arrest, carrying a firearm without a license, and lying under oath. Since they couldn't pin me down for committing a list of crimes, they threw the book at him. This was also Mellow's third offense. Everybody loved Mellow because he was always at his best under pressure and somebody you could always count on. Therefore, we called him Mellow, and the C stood for his first name, Charles. Mellow was the first to teach me how to survive in the streets. When I joined RIP, he looked at me with this evil look to warn me. Never trust anybody who has never committed a crime. Never rat and snitch on a friend. And never leave your gang brother's side, even when trouble's breathing down your neck. Christmas was 2 days away when Mellow C and I ate Chinese food for lunch and went over our big drug deal. After scarfing down my food, I shouted to Mellow C while he was using the bathroom. "We're gonna make a killing! I can't wait to get my claws on 45 fresh white powder keys. New York Reno B will be posted in the parking lot behind Kabar's Liquors at 2 p.m. All good," he shouted. "I've been at this game too long to be reminded I'm OG Mellow C. Remember that." Before making drug deals, we routinely joke around, so I took his jabbing words lightly. Mellow continued the conversation when he strolled out of the bathroom, cool and collected. He smiled with a toasty grin and rubbed his long black beard as he spoke to me about our promising future. "We can stretch that pure white powder," he laughed, "to 1,500,000 or more on the streets." I frowned and looked down in disgust. Damn shame. Blacks jail sentences are 5 times as long for peddling crack as whites get for sniffing it. With more than double our profits, I can finally buy Mom a new house. Shit, I might even buy diamonds for Lynn. Mellow pointed at me with a menacing look. "Remember," he reminded me, "when the hand strikes 3, jump in the car with Reno B. But don't mention cocaine. Talk about the game, feel him out. He's a snitch if he rushes you. Something's wrong. The cops have nothing on you, Ray Ray. I'll be waiting with the money at the liquor store in my car. You slipping. That's 2 o'clock, not 3, so you stay sharp." We both laughed. A New York drug dealer named Reno B should have served as our first significant warning. I warned Mellow emphatically earlier that day about the ache in my stomach. My jury bird slammed every time he mentioned Reno's name, but he ignored my warnings and skirted around the issue with senseless jokes. We should have checked out Reno B for at least 6 months before doing business with him. It had only been 2 months since he introduced himself to the neighborhood, but the deal was too juicy to turn down. At 2 p.m., Reno called Mellow. He sounded different when he requested to meet at his apartment instead of following the game plan. When Reno blamed changing the location and time to an hour later on car trouble, the warning signs continued to mount. This served as the first flag of danger. But since this was the holiday season, pressure has been leaning heavily on Mellow for weeks. The big deal would allow him to buy abnormally expensive gifts for his girlfriend, Qcita, and their new 8-month-old twins, Brandon and Wayne. These factors would make it easy for the smooth-talking dealer Reno to convince him to change plans. Seldom was changing up arrangements reasonable in the middle of a major drug deal. Our sharpshooters, Honeyman and Big Wheel, needed days in advance to prepare for everything to go accordingly unless friendly pedestrians could be killed. No other gang in the Windy City has sharpshooters that could shoot a man dead from a block away. When Mellow C hung up with Reno, he rang me up. In a no-nonsense voice, he gave me the address to Reno's apartment building, 6951 Jeffrey Boulevard. Most of the old Southside apartment buildings have unguarded access to their rooftops, which would make it easy for our sharpshooters to get in place. Immediately, I called up Honeyman and told him to shoot and kill anybody coming out of the building if the deal went south. Mello left his apartment at 2:45 p.m. and drove down Santa Clara Avenue in his blue convertible BMW. He parked 2 blocks away from Reno's apartment building and waited for me, carrying $500,000 in a large duffel bag in his trunk. We had never checked out this location before the deal, so he was amped up but ready to close the deal quickly. He cut his engine and phoned me when I was only minutes away. This neighborhood is real quiet, Ray. Hardly any cars parked on either side of the streets. Honeyman and Big Wheel perched where they belong. Yep, I quickly replied, speaking in code. They're sitting quiet in the nest, big bruh, locked and loaded, ready to shoot the worms, and I'm hungry. Stay alert. Might be an ambush. I arrived at Reno's block and parked directly in front of his building. I was jumpy, so I scraped the curb hard with the side of my rims as I parked. I was flushed, but showed minimal expression on my face. My heart beat as fast as a Timex watch when I cut the engine. I took one last hit of my blunt and got out of the car, slow and poised, just like I'd been taught. I'm only 16, but I acted like a full-grown man when I carried my .44 tucked in the side of my waist. I've also packed a .22 handgun in my lower back, ready for war. I stepped out of the car and carefully surveyed my surroundings, wearing a black hoodie covering my head. I always wore dark shades to cover my face if the police filmed me. Reno's apartment building was a small 8-unit brick building. It appeared to be built in the early 1900s. It looked like it hadn't been painted in years, but maintained a vintage classic appeal. A narrow trail of rocky cement led me to jail bars covering the lower unit windows. The bars surrounded the bottom apartment units and the entrance. Gated windows could turn a good criminal's plan into smoke, as they made it impossible to escape. When I reached the call box, I rang Reno's apartment unit. There was a moment of silence before he buzzed me in. I walked into the building with a nervous disposition beaming through my glossy red eyes. The front hall was quiet as a Catholic church at 1 a.m. A garden odor of fresh flowers cut into my nose as I walked down the hall. When I reached Reno's apartment, he yanked the door open before my fist struck the wood. When I set eyes on him, a 35-year-old black man looked like he had traveled back in time. He stood there conceitedly in the doorway with his skinny arms crossed high on his pigeon chest, wearing Superman pajamas and pink slippers during a major drug deal in the middle of the day. He looked like a 7-year-old boy playing video games all day. This was very strange. So I dismissed my uncertainty regarding his character for the time being and greeted him with a firm handshake and a half smile. I didn't trust him and was determined to make the deal as fast as possible and get back to my side of town. "My man Reno," I greeted him in a low tone. "What's good?" He gave me a soft princess handshake, too soft for my liking, and had an unusually casual expression for making a deal of this magnitude, which raised more concerns. He then opened the door wider and gestured for me to come inside. I entered his apartment like a detective and looked carefully around the room. His small 1-bedroom unit looked as neat as a luxury car on the showroom floor. His home designs were questionable and odd. A sizable picture of the Great Wall of China slanted over a puffy, burgundy leather couch. A colorful room divider with Asian writing separated his living room from a thin walkway of thick carpet, which trailed off into a bedroom with the door closed. There were also 4 red Asian placemats set around a small dinner table, but the table only had 1 chair to sit on. Before my feet settled into the thick carpet, Reno shared his thoughts in a very humorous voice. "Sit down and get comfortable, Ray Ray." I remained standing. "Okay, stand," he continued. "For messing up the deal and arrangements, I put a little extra in the pot to sweeten the deal. I know this is not how R.I.P. gets down." "So," I uttered quickly, "let's do the deal so I can get back to my side of town. Just hand me the goods." Reno displayed a very suspicious look in his beady eyes as he reached for his coffee mug sitting on the table. He grinned guiltily, like he was up to no good as he took a sip. He appeared to be stalling and carefully choosing his words, which made me extremely nervous. "I'm a man of my word, Ray Ray," he said, branding his truth into my intense gorilla stare with a long stare of his own. "But I see you've come empty-handed, my brother. Maybe I need to be questioning you instead of the other way around." I replied and nodded toward the window. "It's in the car," I spoke slowly. "Show me the dope, and I'll break off the bread. That's how things work around here." "Be right back," he said. When Reno exited the living room to retrieve the dope, I was wary of something being wrong. I looked around the room, and the 60-inch flat-screen TV was unplugged. The cable wires were unattached, and a small clock resting on the table displayed the wrong time. The time was off by more than an hour. I was already on edge, so all these signs set me off. I realized that the apartment might be staged to look like Reno lived there. Suddenly, everything in the apartment looked like it had been purchased at the flea market and set up only hours before I arrived. I tried to control my nerves, but my lip began to quiver. My mouth became severely dry to the point that I could barely talk. I wanted to run, but I remained engaged in doing the deal. Reno casually drifted back into the room. He appeared highly jittery as he carried a massive green sack loaded with packages of cocaine. He was also smiling again, too hard for my taste. "Let's see what you got," I demanded. "And what's up with the clock? Is it broken? How do you keep up with the time, my man?" He laughed with crafty chatter and brushed me off. "Oh man, that old thing keeps terrible time. But this white powder right here, it's the dawn of the new day. Tastes like heaven." Reno quickly pulled out a small brick, 1 kilo of cocaine, and tossed it to me. He reached his hand into his pajama pockets and pulled out a small fingernail file. His hands were shaking as he passed them to me. Use this," he said and winked. I grabbed the fingernail file and did my best to keep my own hands from shaking. I flicked it open and cut open the bag to have a taste. "Nice," I smiled. "I'll get the money. But why don't you show me around your apartment first? I might want to live in this building one day. Who knows?" After setting the stage for my trap, I slapped Reno hard on the shoulder, then turned him with a stiff hand toward his bedroom. I wanted to see if he reacted under pressure. He would likely deter me from seeing his room if he were set up. I also was fully aware that I must produce money to make the deal, to be held for serious charges. So far, the only crime I've committed was tasting cocaine. If Reno were fed, his entire plan would be based on making the deal and arresting me after I handed over the money. Also, I'm only 16 years old, so my time in jail should be no more than a couple of years in a youth facility at most. My big brother Mello C explained that's why I was doing the exchange and not him. He's 21 years old. all these finer details were circulating in my young mind before I asked to see Reno's bedroom. My clever wit could be a curse or a blessing, but it made me quickly move up the ranks of RIP. As I turned Reno toward his bedroom, he kicked the tripwire and fell for my trap. "Oh, Ray," he laughed and resisted my invitation by turning away from the bedroom. "What do you mean you never know what you might find, man? I checked out already. Everything's cool. Let's make this deal happen and be done." Once Reno resisted, I was sure he was up to no good. Instead of showing him my handful of aces, I smiled like the Joker and acted like he was my new best friend. "Okay, you right," I replied. "I get the money and be right back." Now, my intentions were purely to survive. I wanted to continue breathing God's fresh air as a free man. I also wanted to physically tell Mellow C that we should abort the deal instead of using my cell phone. Our cell phones could be tapped. Although it appeared to be a setup, I'm still clueless that federal agents were posted in unmarked cars around the corner and hiding in Reno's bedroom. They've been patiently waiting like thirsty hounds for him to give the word to arrest me after I showed him the money. Reno was also wired, so they recorded our entire conversation. This was all extremely challenging news for me and Mellow C. I crept out of the building like a possum in the night and acted very composed when I hit the streets. I first scanned the area high and low, then walked quickly past my car and headed down the street to Mellow. Although I thought this was the most brilliant move, I made a terrible mistake. Instead of calling him, I led the Fed straight to Mellow C and the duffel bag full of money in his trunk. Seconds before I reached him, the Feds busted onto the scene like they were robbing the Federal Reserve. As soon as I heard screeching tires, adrenaline shot through my body. I lost my composure. I darted toward the alley in a flash. When Mellow C saw me running for my life, my trail of panic hit him in the face like a bag of bricks. But it was too late. The Feds surrounded him. They flew out of their unmarked cars with guns drawn like in a Hollywood movie. They were ready to blaze hot metal into his chest. They started screaming for Mellow C to get out of the car, full of incensed aggression. When he stumbled out, they slammed him to the ground, face first, then slapped the cuffs on him. As I raced through the alley like a runaway slave, I was terrified. I leaped over a 6-foot fence, climbed onto the rooftop of the next building, and started hopping like a kangaroo from one rooftop to the next, before sliding down a drainage pipe and hiding in someone's backyard. I tucked down low so I couldn't be seen. I hid under a porch infested with spider webs and insects and stayed out of the sight until the coldest part of the night was digging into my bones. I shivered and held myself tight to stay warm until I thought the coast was clear. Honeyman and Big Wheel exited the scene when they saw the cops fly around Mellow C's car. There were far too many cops to start a war. Around midnight, I dragged over to Lynn's crib with my pride and dignity tucked between my legs, like a shameless hog. I knew the feds were looking for me, because I never shared my personal life with Reno B or spoke to him before the deal. I felt like Lynn's apartment was a safe haven. Although Mellow forgave me for leaving him, stating that he would have done the same thing if the tables were turned. We should have never done the deal. My guilt caused me to lie to everybody about what happened. I forged a lie into a believable story. I made everybody believe the feds chased me out of Reno B's apartment and into the alley before I could warn Mellow with a quick phone call. My nerves just got the best of me. I was young and dumb and made a horrible decision. When Mellow C got sentenced to life in prison, I wanted to leap off the Sears Tower. I wish I had made a better choice. Mello would never have a chance to swim in an ocean, see his children or grandchildren graduate from school, run his hands through a sandy white beach, or make love to his woman again. And because the feds had no proof that I supplied the money, they could only tie me down for engaging in a brief conversation with Reno B. In the end, Mello C satisfied the feds' hunger for catching the big fish, so they never came after me. But I lost a brother who helped me navigate through life and taught me about honor and keeping one's promise. As the ultimate rule on the streets dictated, never snitch if you get busted, especially on your friends and gang brothers.